Hello and welcome back to Student Tutorials. In today's tutorial is going to be a continuation of our Breadboard SVG creation, in which we teach you some of the basics of Inkscape. So you'll see here, this is where we left off last time. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create our pinholes for our breadboard. So if I bring up my reference image and zoom in here, you'll see the black circles with grey circles on the outside around them. So we're going to do this using the ellipse tool. So you can either click on the circle at the side here, I'm just going to select a darker grey for the outer circle, or you can press E. So I'm just dragging it to about yay big, and don't worry, we're going to size this down later. This is just so we can see while we're editing. And I'm going to create a black circle and put this on the inside as well. Now we need to create these circles into one shape, but it can be quite hard to select both shapes when they're this close in size. So a handy trick we're going to use is Alt-click. So you'll see here, if I use Alt-click once, it's going to select this top black circle. If I then put Alt and then click again, it selects the second circle instead. So I'm just going to use Shift, Alt, Click to select both circles and then Control G to create a group. There we go. I now have my one pinhole. So I'm just going to size this down. You'll see it's currently in layer 1, so I'm just going to move this up to be in layer 2. And there we go. Now, rather than creating a bunch of individual pinholes to create our breadboard, which would take ages, what we're going to do is a combination of Control D to duplicate our holes, just like so, and the alignment tab to make sure they're all in line. So I'm just going to select all three of these circles. And you see I already have my align and distribute tab open from last video. I'm just going to make sure the top and bottom's aligned. Make sure they're evenly spaced. And then I'm going to use the rubber band trick to make these three into a group. You'll see I'm just locking layer 1 again like we did last time. Rubber banding it, and then Control G. And you'll see here that I can now move these objects as one. So if we go back to our reference image here, you'll see the bottom bit is a 2x6 set of circles, just like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to use Control D, Alignment tab, and Grouping to create my breadboard much quicker. There we go, so that's me creating my pinholes, just like so. Now you see here we have two more things to add. We need to add the text to our breadboard, and we need to add the wire that connects the bottom. So firstly I'm going to add the text. You'll see here on the reference image that the text is kind of a bluey teal colour. So I'm just going to select this at the bottom. There we go. And I'm going to open the text tool using T. So I'm just going to drag a box across the top here, just for the first 9 numbers. I'm doing the single digits separately from the double digits as the sizing is a little bit different to make it line up with the pinholes. So I'm just going to tap once and enter my numbers, so 1 to 9, and exit. Now you'll see here this colour is a little bit bright, so I'm just going to go to my fill and I'm going to drag the colour down a bit to make it a bit darker and easier to read. There you go. You'll also see we now have a text and fonts tab, which allows us to edit our text within this. You can also open this using Shift Control T, or just from right clicking here and pressing text and font. You'll notice here as well at the bottom that our fill and stroke are not the same colour. So the stroke is the outside of the letter, which is currently grey. So I'm just going to change this to also be a teal colour. So you can either do this manually, like so, using the stroke paint tab. Or if you want the colours to match, you can right click on your fill colour, copy the colour and paste it onto the stroke. Or you'll even notice at the bottom here there's actually an option to swap your fill and stroke colour. But I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. So I'm now going to exit my text tool, and I'm just going to use the Selector tool to resize these numbers to fit the pinholes. And you'll see I haven't actually aligned these properly, but I do fix this down the line. I'm just going to Control D this, so the height is the same, and I'm going to change this to have my double digits. So I've now created my numbers using the grouping command and Control D to put it on the top and bottom. I'm now going to use the text tool this time to draw a vertical box to create the letters on the left-hand side. So I've now created my letters on my breadboard. So the final thing we have to do is add this wire across the bottom. So there are a few different ways we can do this. I'm just going to use this to demonstrate some of the final things that you haven't learned yet in Inkscape. So the first method we're going to use to create this is a bit simpler. To create the red box, what we're going to do is we're going to use our rectangle tool like usual. So I'm just going to select a red here and use the rectangle tool. But this time, instead of exiting the tool, we're going to pull down this circle at the top here, and this just rounds the edges of our box, just like so. Now, to create our wires either side, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select a grey colour, and we're going to use the Bezier tool. So if you press B, this will open this tool up, and this just allows you to create uniform lines and tangent curves to create some more regular shapes. So you'll see here I'm just clicking to place the lines where I want them, like so, and I'm just joining up to that very first box there. There you go, and when you click it will fill it in for you. Now note you can also create curves by dragging on your second click to create a curve that is at a tangent to your line, just like so. But we don't need that for this situation. So there we go, I'm just going to go in. And one thing we haven't talked about yet is the nose tool. So if I click here, you see that these nodes come up. So this node selector is just underneath your selector tool. And the nodes just allow you to have exact precision over your shape. So you'll see here, my bottom is not flush. So I'm just going to drag down this bottom right node, and my shape is now straight to the bottom. Here we go. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm just going to Control D to make a second one. Drag it over here, and then use this tool at the top here to flip it round. There we go. One last thing we need to do here is bring this red wire to the top. So to do that, I am going to use the page up and page down commands. So if you click your red shape and just press your page up on your keyboard, once it will bring it in front of your grey wire on the left, and a second time will bring it in front of your grey wire on the right. And of course you can use page down to put it back behind them. There we go. I'm just going to group this together now. Just like so. So that's one way of making our wire. The second way is admittedly a bit more complicated, but it just shows off some of the other features of Inkscape. So what we're going to do is use Boolean commands. I'm going to show these off and use the shape selector to create our red shape. So you'll see here, I'm just going to create myself a red rectangle. Selecting red and then using my rectangle tool here. And you notice I can get rid of my curves by using this top right button here that puts my corners back on. I'm also going to create myself a blue circle just so I can demonstrate very clearly what we're about to do. So if we select both shapes using Shift, what we're going to do first is we're going to put Control and then use our minus button on our keyboard. And you'll see that this just takes away this second shape from the first shape, like so. If I do this again, but instead I use Control and plus, it's going to combine the shapes and give it the colour of the bottom one. If I do Control and the backslash symbol, it's going to divide my circle into my rectangle, like so I can move the piece in and out. If I use Control and the asterisk, it's going to give me the intersection of the two shapes. And if I use Control and the circumflex, it's going to give me the exclusion of the two shapes. So these are very useful for creating combination shapes with Inkscape. What we're going to do is take it a step further, and we're going to use the Selector tool to create a combination shape. So what I'm going to do is place my circle within my rectangle, like so. And again, this is a much more complicated way of creating a rounded rectangle, but it just shows off how you can create complex shapes within Inkscape. So I'm going to select both my shapes here, and I'm just going to press X. And this takes me to this shape selector tool. So the way this works is if you click on the shapes you want to include in your new compound shape, like so, it'll be blue. And if you use shift click, it will remove any unwanted pieces of shape, like so. So I'm just going to escape this for now because we don't want this to be our shape. And I'm going to add a blue rectangle on the right, just like so. So you can see how a rounded shape is going to take place. I'm going to select all three of these shapes here, like so, and I'm going to open up my shape selector tool. So I'm just going to get rid of these corners. There we go. And I'm just going to Command G this shape, or Control G this shape, and turn it red. You'll see here that the stroke is also a light blue for some reason. I'm just going to select all my shapes and turn this back into red, using Shift and click to select my stroke colour. So now that we have this shape, all I'm going to do is Control G it to make it a group, and I'm going to copy it and flip it so that both sides have this rounded edge to it. Choose my flip command up here, and there we go. Finally, we're going to create our wires, and this time instead of using the Bezier tool, we're going to use the pen tool. So see here, I'm just going to select myself a grey, and we're going to click P for pen. This is a hand-drawn shape, so I'm just going to click and drag to draw my wire. Just like so. And connect the dot. Now, what you'll notice here is that this shape is very messy. It's not got lots of straight edges, it's very clearly hand-drawn. So what you can do is if you go into your node selector tool again and click here, you see there's tons and tons of nodes, but you can press Ctrl L and this will reduce the amount of nodes you have, so it will simplify the shape down. So I've just pressed this a couple times here. Once I'm happy with the basic frame, what I'm going to do is go in and manually rearrange the nodes. So see here, if I click on a node, it's got two circles either side. So I'm just going to try and line up the circles from each of the adjacent nodes with each other in order to straighten my shape out a little bit. I'm just fixing this bottom right edge here. I'm also going to go up and fix this corner one and just drag this down. And I'm going to fix my top right edge as well. There we go, so I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So I'm just going to go back onto my selector tool here. Copy this over and flip it again. And again, I'm just using my page up and page down command to bring the red forward. So you'll see here we've now got two very different methods of creating our wire, and that has allowed us to cover just about all of the basics you need for creating any object in Inkscape. So the very last thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take our first one, because I think I prefer the look of this one, and I'm going to add it into our breadboard. So see here I'm just moving it down and resizing it. I've also noticed here that I don't think my red wire is quite long enough, so I'm actually going to go and ungroup this and edit the shape of my red block. Just like so. And I'm just going to regroup this together. So there we go, that's how I've created our Breadboard SVG, just like the one you're going to use in your labs. I hope this video was helpful in teaching you the very basics of Inkscape. In our next video, we're going to teach you how to import and how to export within Inkscape. Thanks so much for watching.